How you doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and we're back at it with our latest Big Mets update segment. And we just dropped one previously last night, so highly implore you all to check it out as we highlight the Mets targeting Jurickson Profar as a potential bat fit, along with the Dodgers landing Tanner Scott and that immediate impact it has on the Mets and everyone across Major League Baseball. Because today, folks, Anthony Santander, another potential bat fit, but to a lesser degree after the Mets brought in Jesse Winker for that platoon role in the DH, Santander has signed a 5-year contract with the Toronto Blue Jays. Far from shocking, as they've been heavily negotiating over the past couple days, but what isn't also shocking is that Pete Alonso is absolutely being paved the way to return to this Mets team by opening day. We'll get into how this is not only contrary to Andy Martino's reporting over the past couple days, but reporting that has come out since then, which favors the Mets in this current talks with Pete Alonso. How likely, unlikely is it to happen right now, folks? Because I've said it for a while and I'll say it again. I will truly be surprised if Pete Alonso is not a New York Met on opening day. Thank you guys so much for smashing like and subscribe on as your first chime in, and let us know your initial reactions to it all in the comments down below. And shout out to our amazing sponsor at BetUS, which has you covered not only with your sports betting needs, but also all your online casino needs, folks. Get ready with BetUS Casino, folks. Generous promotions and tournaments make every play even more rewarding. Sign up now and experience a difference. Get your bonus 200% sign up bonus up to $5,000 and a 250% crypto bonus sign up bonus up to $5,000. Simply head over to betus.com.pa today, folks, and have an absolute blast. So make sure you guys bet responsibly, get involved with your gambling responsibly. Highly implore you guys to not get involved if you guys feel that you have no clue what you're getting yourself into or can't handle it. Thank you guys again, as always. But as we see beside me now, the Mets, we have seen some guys leave, that being in Joey Fuego, Mr. Lucchesi, one of the first arms, one of the first players that Steve Cohen acquired since owning the team there since right around October, November of 2020. Lucchesi, who initially was a part of this Mets rotation his first year, then went down with Tommy John or so, and has never been able to be that true formidable starter in this rotation. But even having said that, I wish nothing but the best for Lucchesi and his entire family there going to San Fran. Joins another former Southpaw, if he's still in the organization. Don't quote me on because I don't know with certainty, but I think of Thomas Szapucki right away. Remember, he got rocked a couple years ago in San Fran, and then he ended up being a Giant that same year, along with J.D. Davis, if I'm not mistaken. Now to come to find out, Joey Lucchesi, who carved up those Giants batters in San Fran back in 2023, I'm sure goes in hand with why they see the appeal there for someone like him joining their lab, and they have a solid lab there in San Fran, so I'm sure he may hit higher highs than what he has done with the Mets here. But Lucchesi, who's been on the outside looking in, has stepped up for the Mets in moments when called upon. Didn't have a great start for the Mets against the Phillies back in filling that batter's box earlier in 2024 when things weren't going in the Mets' favor, but he stepped up greatly in his final start with the Mets in the final game of the year there in the doubleheader against the Atlanta Braves right before the Mets clinched there for postseason. He had himself a very sharp outing in that doubleheader against Atlanta, and that'll never be forgotten. Wishing you the absolute best, Joey. Give him absolute you-know-what there in San Fran. And speaking of another Southpaw, we have Alex Young, a former San Francisco Giant and Cincinnati Red, and most recently a New York Met as a lefty option in this bullpen, who posted just over a 3 ERA and a solid amount of innings. Alex Young, Danny Young, the Young combo, they were the 1-2 punch of lefty options for the Mets after they parted ways with Jake Diekman in 2024. Come to find out, Alex Young is now signed, and he's back in Cincinnati with the Reds there, if I'm not mistaken, on a minors deal there. So wishing Alex Young the absolute best, too, as the Mets now have their lefty option in AJ Minter, and a guy that has upside but will be competing for a pen spot to a lesser degree at Genesis Cabrera, most recently of the Toronto Blue Jays. But now, folks, speaking of the Toronto Blue Jays, a perfect transition, and that was not purposeful either, so I'm really happy about that. Let's talk about briefly Anthony Santander signing with the Toronto Blue Jays, because this is a bat that we would have loved, obviously, as a true DH fit, a switch-hitting DH fit. But after the Mets brought back Jesse Winker, it became abundantly clear that they will have a rotation there at that DH spot of Jesse batting mainly righty against right-handed pitchers, until proven otherwise. Sterling Marte, unless he's traded, because the Mets bring in a guy with higher upside, like a Jurickson Profar, for example, Marte will be in that role facing mainly lefties, barring changes as of now. So, given the fact that the Mets already have DH essentially figured out the way that they like it right now with David Stearns, Santander was a lock to land elsewhere, and the Toronto Blue Jays always felt like the obvious fit. They're desperate, they need to make a move, and they finally done that, inking him on a 5-year contract of right around $92, $93 million. So an $18 million of average annual value per year, which is very interesting, including a Blue Jays club option in this deal as well. So one, Good deal for Anthony Santander, obviously. He stays in the AL East against his former team now in the Baltimore Orioles. I hate that the O's allowed him to walk when this felt like, honestly, a digestible contract. Don't love the years at all, but I certainly don't hate the AAV for a switch-hitting home run hitter that had 44 bombs last year, right? We're looking at a guy with 3 consecutive seasons of 28 home runs or more, and he's only at the age of 30. So this was a very nice pickup for the Toronto Blue Jays to pair with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in what is hopefully going to be his one and final year there in Toronto, as he will sign a blockbuster deal with the Mets next offseason. I'm willing that into existence, barring changes. But folks, how does this impact now the market at Pete Alonso? It's a great question. The simple reality here is that Pete Alonso doesn't have a market. That's what we've come down to. The San Francisco Giants might be that X factor, but as we alluded just a couple days ago, folks, the Giants gave up 4 draft picks for signings last year. They already gave up another 2 this year. Are they really inclined to give up more and more of their draft and their farm, which is weak at the moment, in retrospect to other teams in the National League, for the sake of signing Alonso, who may have an opt-out and then hit the free agent market again? One, I don't see any role where it makes sense for Pete Alonso to sign with a team like the Giants or the Seattle Mariners on, say, a 3-year contract with an opt-out, similar to what he offered the Mets. If he pivots and gives that to other teams, I can't envision that making sense for Alonso and him wanting to hit the market again, because he'll then go into what is not a batter's box. And I know Citi Field is a pitcher's park, but he also is known for being really well at Citi Field, right? He knows the dimensions better than any other park, obviously. If he went to San Fran for a year where the bats always go to die, if he goes to Seattle where the bats always go to die for half a season, I'm led to believe that he's going to be not only banking on himself to have a big year to hit the free agent market again, but I'm also led to believe that he will not meet that expectation, especially with the pieces around him in either said lineup. Are there other sleeper teams, and potentially the Washington Nationals to a degree? They felt that way up until they acquired Nathaniel Lowe there from the Texas Rangers. So when you look at the market for Pete Alonso, it is slim to none, folks. He doesn't have one. And until we find out that Pete Alonso, breaking news, so-and-so has signed Pete Alonso to a 3, 4, 5-year contract, I need to see it to believe it, everybody, because until then, I'm not buying it for one simple second. Alonso back to the Mets feels like not a foregone conclusion, but still something that I think is of great reality, folks. And here is a perfect quote that you guys can see here, actually. This comes a couple days ago from Robert Murray there through Fansided. A lot of people missed this, and now it's being resurfaced because I didn't see it until now. But in his quote, he says, however, Fanside's MLB insider Robert Murray revealed in a January 16th article that, according to his sources, the Mets aren't actually done courting Alonso. And I quote, "That belief stemmed from a report of 3-year offer of $68 to $70 million range is valid," Murray wrote after addressing the perception that Alonso returning to the Mets is unlikely. However, and this is the key highlighted part here, guys, you can see it, but the reality is that Alonso returning the Mets is still on the table. The two sides have talked recently, and it's clear that each side is the best fit for each other. Color me shocked, everybody. Pete Alonso and the Mets are absolutely the best destination for each other. The Mets want another power bat to bat behind Soto. Pete Alonso fits that better than anyone else. They have a gaping hole at first base right now. It's almost like Pete Alonso fits that beautifully for them. And for Alonso, after stubbornly saying, hey, I will only give you Mets an exclusive 3-year offer at $90+ million with an opt-out where I won't approach anyone, and the Mets counter has been the same at right around $70 million, I'm not mad at the Mets at all. Anthony Santander is getting $18 million of average annual value, a guy that you could argue is right in the realm of Alonso when it comes to power production, right? Yes, he hasn't consistently hit for 35, 40+ bombs the way that Alonso has, but he's coming off of a career year, and I know it was his walk year, so bear that in mind. But Santander is a switch-hitting phenom in a class of his own. There's barely any switch hitters in the game today that hit for power like Santander. Lindor has found himself in that category as your typical 30 home run, 100 RBI guy, and of course stealing 25 to 30 stolen bags, but there has been a lot there, which is why Santander, to a certain extent, is a little bit of an anomaly in this market. Unlike Pete Alonso, who's really just the cream of the crop of above-average first base options. That's what it comes down to. And Alonso, we know this entire process has not been easy for him, nor has this been easy for the Mets and David Stearns, right? They would like him back, but they also know, and the reason why David Stearns and the Mets aren't blinking is because they absolutely know that the market isn't in his favor. The Mets will continue to allow Alonso to wait as long as he wants to try to find a suitor elsewhere, to have Scott Boras be the stubborn agent that he is, because unless you're a generational talent or a truly elite elite talent like Juan Soto and other talents that he's inked to long-term deals in recent years, Scott Boras has absolutely missed the mark with his mid-level free agents like Alonso, like Chapman, like Snell, even though he has ace caliber stuff, Jordan Montgomery. The list goes on from there. This is far from a shock that Scott Boras has absolutely botched a lot of off seasons for above average players, but players that aren't deserving of getting elite status dollars. And there's an importance to separate the two. And as talented as Alonso has been, we know where he stands. We know him at his best, we know him at his worst. We all saw him at his worst all throughout the 162 this past season, but how he made up for it in postseason is what trumps it all. But what it doesn't trump is the reality that the Mets are going to stand firm on their right around 3-year deal, which did in fact include an opt-out after the first season, along with right around $23 million of average annual value. That's $5 million more per year than Anthony Santander, bud. How much more do you really think you're going to get? Because it ain't going to be much more than this, if at all. You should be grateful at this rate they're even going to be considered by the Mets at this point, as they've quote-unquote pivoted elsewhere. But until we see the Mets sign Jurickson Profar and say, hey, he's going to be a first base option for us, or until we find out and say, hey, the Mets have acquired someone else as a true Alonso replacement, everything, and I mean everything, is still pointing towards the great reality that Alonso will find himself back in Queens. Go ahead and look at the market. Go ahead and look at the past month and a half on the endless teams. Every single team in Major League Baseball that needed a first baseman went and got them in the short-term market that we saw with the Paul Goldschmidts of the world, and then we even saw in the trade market with not only Nathaniel Lowe, but Mr. Naylor going from Cleveland to Arizona. We saw Carlos Santana, yes, going back to the Cleveland Guardians for what feels like the 5th time, right? Back in Cleveland. We've seen all these smaller moves, short-term moves at first base, and right now the only other guy that's notable in the free agent market to a degree is Anthony Rizzo. The Yankees don't want Anthony Rizzo. You think the Mets want Anthony Rizzo? I'm going to go on a limb and say no, that's not happening. The Mets are comfortable shifting Mark Vientos to first base for 2025 if they need to, and then platooning either in-house options or an external option that they haven't talked about too much yet publicly outside of Alex Bregman, who is another player in the Scott Boras market that's failing to reach the market that he wants. And as each passing day goes on, these same teams have less and less interest, and these same teams have more and more interest on short-term high AAV. Congratulations to Santander for avoiding the short-term high AV deal with potential opt-outs there. The Toronto Blue Jays are so damn desperate that they knew that they needed to give at least 5 years to get the job done for Anthony. And the good thing, though, is that Santander, who profiles best as a DH fit more than anything, he's only 30. So this is like a Kyle Schwarber contract just with another year. I really don't dislike this for Toronto, even with it being, you could say, an overpay on years. I hate the Andres Gimenez contract that they absorbed. I hate that they absorbed the Miles Straw contract as well. They are literally just the salary dump place for the Cleveland Guardians. And congratulations to Cleveland on manipulating how poorly ran the Toronto Blue Jays are. But for the Jays, and for a team that's still trying to be competitive in 2025, hoping that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. will stay beyond this year, which I do not foresee to happen barring changes, Pete Alonso only felt like a lock if that DH position was going to be open. Now that it won't be, now that Santander will be playing more DH than the outfield naturally because he's not a good fielder all that much, that is exactly why everything has paved the way now for Pete Alonso, who has been stubborn, who initially approached the Mets along with Scott Boras on a 6-year contract, on a 5-year contract, and then ultimately the exclusive 3-year deal. They're still right around a $15 to $25 million gap in that range. Just get the job done. This is just a lot of nonsense. We have talked about Alonso every day, and we'll continue to until we find out what happens with him. But for all the fans saying, don't worry about Pete anymore, he's not coming back, here's the thing. Even after Andy said that, the wording was always clear. The Mets are going under the belief that they're not going to be bringing back Alonso, that he's likely to go elsewhere. But that's them also putting in the media abundantly clear that, Pete, the ball's in your court, bud. Go ahead and test the market. See how far it's going to get you. And how far has it gone Alonso at this point? It has made him lose millions of dollars. Scott Boras has only courted him worse and worse to a point where if he signs elsewhere, unless he lands with a team that is a bit of a batter's box, maybe a team that we're not talking about at all, where Alonso then could be traded at the deadline, or again, how more juiced, inflated offensive numbers while maybe not being on the best team to then hit the free agent market. If that happens, then we'll talk about it then. But listen, Pete wants to win. He wants to be a Met. He's disgruntled to a degree that David Stearns and Steve Cohen have not chomped at the bit for him the way that they did for Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander, but operations have changed, and the Mets know that if they want to have sustained success, they can't be stupid, and they're spending, and they need to be strategic about it while not being cheap at the same time. That's exactly why I firmly believe, Pete Alonso, you will be a New York Met on opening day until we have the breaking news to suggest otherwise. But folks, I want to know your initial reactions to it all in the comments down below. How do you feel about Anthony Santander signing a 5-year contract with the Toronto Blue Jays? Do you like that for them? Do you dislike that for them? And ultimately, as the Mets continue to try to add more bats this offseason, do you think Alonso is still such a strong likelihood, the way that I've been led to believe pretty much since the start, even with everything that Martino has reported the past week? It really hasn't wavered my personal thought process all that much, even though, again, it's hard to stomach the idea of Alonso not being in a Mets uniform. I think the bias kicks in a little bit with that too. But regardless on however you feel with the Alonso front, drop them down in the comments below. Thank you guys again so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed this Mets content and want to see more great, consistent content like this, where we have you covered on all things news, rumors, live streams all the time here on the platform, make sure to hit those buttons on your way out. And also help us get to 31,000 subscribers, folks. We're just around 30 away. Every 1,000 subscriber milestone that we hit on the platform this year, we're doing a giveaway of some sort. We gave away a Juan Soto Mets jersey when we hit 30K over this past month. Now, once we hit 31K, we will be doing another Mets-related giveaway that I will then give to someone in a future live stream that I will announce on once we have officially hit 31. So, guys, thank you so much for the endless support and for helping us get there in advance. I'll talk to you guys again real soon. Let's go Mets, baby. Peace out.